Hi there, I'm filming in a different room today. The room I normally film in isn't getting a lot of sunlight right now, even though it is pretty sunny today, so I thought I'd move to this room. But every time I film down here, I always really like how the lighting looks, much better than upstairs. So maybe I'll film more videos from down here when the sunlight's not great up there. I have a project pan update today. I feel really good about how things are going so far this year. I have 3 rollouts and a lot of success set up for future months. I'm gonna go in the same order I always do and start with a blush that I'm trying to finish. It's not every day that I finish a powder blush, but this one I already had pan on, and it's a crumbly formula, so I feel like it's going a little bit more quickly. It's also not that pigmented. I'm wearing it on my cheeks today with another blush, and I still feel like it's not too much. I think in my last update, I told you I was going to scrape out the rest of it and put it into a separate pot so that it was easier to get product onto my brush. I didn't end up doing that. I just carefully kept using it the way that it was. And then today I took a picture of what it looks like and then put it into a separate container. So I have 2 photos to show you. I just had a little bit in the corners, and I imagine I'll be able to finish this in the next month. And I'm just very excited to have a powder blush empty at all, but to have one so early in the year is really exciting. I'm also working through a cream blush. This is a mini from Tarte. I don't think that they make this anymore, but it's in the shade Pink Sky. I had just barely hit pan on this when I first rolled it in, and I'm continuing to expand that pan over time. I'm unsure if I could finish this by next month because it's a relatively pigmented product, and so I don't need to grab a ton every time I'm grabbing for it. But if it's not done by my next update, it'll be very close and definitely done by the next one. I have quite a few cream blushes considering how slowly I go through them, and some of them are getting up there in age. This is my oldest one, and once this is gone, I'll just roll in my next oldest cream blush. This next product I do think will be gone next month, and that's the NYX Bare With Me Concealer Serum in the shade Fair. I started wearing this as a concealer and as a foundation mix-in, so I'm going through it really quickly, at least compared to the progress that I would make every month in my previous project pan last year, because this was also in that for I think the majority of the year. I like it, and I do like it as a foundation mixer, but I don't know if I would go out of my way to buy this again because it doesn't have a ton of coverage to put under my eyes. Like it's just okay as an under eye concealer. And yeah, I've been working on this for a long time, so I'm excited to have it rolled out potentially by next month. Yet another product that I think will be gone by my next update. This is a lip pencil from About Face in the shade Midnight Seduction. I probably only have 1 or 2, maybe 3 more sharpens out of this. I really love it. I'm wearing it on my lips today, and then I have like a plummier pink lipstick on top. This was wonderful to wear in the winter because it's a slightly deeper mauve color, and I really like how creamy the formula is. I used to just prefer like wooden pencil stiffer formulas, but I'm kind of liking creamy pencils too. So this has been great, and I think this will be gone by next month. I might have a ton of rollouts next month, my goodness. Okay, this one's definitely not gonna be done by next month. This is the Becca color corrector in the shade Fair Light. I had mentioned that I try to use the back of a pair of tweezers to grab a little bit of product each time because I don't want this to get under my fingernail. And someone in the comments said, well, why don't you just use the back of your thumbnail instead of going inward and trying to get it on your finger pad? Why don't you grab a little bit with the back of your fingernail, and that way it won't get under your fingernail? I don't know why I hadn't thought of that. Thank you for that, for that advice. So that just makes it even quicker to reach for in the mornings, but it's also creating like a little star shape in the center of the product because I kind of go for a different spot every single time. Very creamy, very brightening, and I don't need a lot every time I reach for it, so I think this is going to take me the majority of the year to finish. Another long haul product, this is the Becca Berlin Girl Glow Highlighter. I had pan on it, or was very close to hitting pan when I rolled this in, and I've expanded the pan, but I don't really reach for that specific part. I have a slightly longer soft brush that I use, which means I'm more evenly reaching for product around the pan. It's wearing down very slowly. It looks very thin in the pan as a result. What I'm predicting is this is going to not look like it's making a lot of progress and then make a ton of progress all at once at the end. Now for my first finished product of this update, it's the Commodity Gold Perfume. I wore this a total of 203 times in order to finish it, but in my last month of working on it, I wore it 28 times. I've had this perfume for years, and I've had times where I really liked it and times where I didn't like it as much. And I think the main reason is when I would wear it in the warmer months, I didn't like it. It's very sweet, very vanilla heavy, and that scent just works so much better for me in the winter. So I'm really glad I was able to finish it by the time winter is coming to an end. And when I thought about what perfume I want to roll into its place, I don't know if I have a lot of springy scents necessarily, but I do have one that I think is appropriate to wear in the spring, and that's Glossier U. It's also one of my oldest perfumes, and I'm actually not that crazy about it. And because of the way the glass is frosted, it's hard to see towards the beginning how much progress you're making. So in the photo, I have it turned upside down. I've already worn this 36 times, and this is about half the size of the commodity gold one. So I'm gonna assume this will take maybe a little over 100 wears. It might even take more because I'm not really putting on a ton each time. I'm hoping to have this done by maybe the beginning of summer or the middle of summer, and then I can roll in some of my more summery scents. Something about Glossier perfumes, they don't last very long, at least on me. I really love the one in the yellow bottle. I have a mini of that and I just love it. It's one of my favorite perfumes I've ever tried. So once I work through some of my older perfumes, I'll likely get a full size of that. Okay, the rest of the products are more usage based and not products that I'm necessarily trying to finish. I actually have another rollout technically. This is the Enduring Love palette by Signe Grace. When I first rolled it in, I had worn this already a total of 113 times, and my goal was to get up to 150 wears and then decide if I still wanted to have it in my collection. In my last update, I had worn it an additional 29 times to get me up to 142 wears, and I have worn it an additional 8 times since my last update to get me up to 150. I've really enjoyed this palette. It was a great companion palette with some of my more colorful palettes. It's also one of my oldest palettes, and I think I am ready to declutter it. And knowing that I was able to reach for it and enjoy it 150 times makes me feel a lot more at peace with that decision. My next palette in this portion of the project was a more colorful palette that I would pair with Enduring Love. It's the Shroud Arcana palette. Beautiful, beautiful color story. I was a little worried because of how dark and colorful this palette is. I really like it, but it's not like an everyday palette for me. But being able to pair it with more neutral palettes has opened up a lot of possibilities for me. I've also occasionally used this green and this blue shade as nail polishes. I actually only did it once with the blue nail polish. I don't like how it turned out. Maybe the formula's a little bit different, or it's getting a little old and it doesn't look as nice as a nail polish as the green one does. And in my last update, when I mentioned that I use some of these shades as nail polishes, I got a lot of questions from people in the comments about how I do that. And I actually follow a tutorial or a method that Rebecca Morgan did years and years and years ago. So what I'll do is I'll have that linked in the description box and maybe also in like a pinned comment. And that way, if you want to see how it's done, she's already made a video about how to do it. And that's the exact method that I follow. I've worn this an additional 21 times in the last month to get me up to 78 wears. So I need to wear it an additional 22 times in order to reach that 100 use thresh mark. Did I just make up a word? Thresh mark? I don't think that's a word. I meant to say threshold. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm able to create more neutral or wearable everyday looks for myself using these shades much more than I anticipated. I just assumed that pulling for this palette would make any look I'm doing much darker and more colorful than I would normally go for, but that hasn't been the case. And I also like using these darker mattes as a liner just to add a little something different to the look. And if I do wear one of these darker shimmers all over my lid, often I'll put a lighter shimmer shade either on the center or on the first half of the lid just to kind of add a little bit of brightness and a little bit of lightness back to the look. And I'm just so glad to be reaching for this again. It's one that I don't think to reach for, and I'm evenly reaching for all of the shades. Like I think I've reached for every shade multiple times since my last update, and it just makes me feel so much better that this palette is getting more love. And the reason I brought that in is because it's one of my most neglected and one of my oldest palettes. The third palette I had rolled into this project is this ColourPop palette. It's in the Flutterby packaging, but it's a bunch of shades from a bunch of different ColourPop palettes I've had over the years. I just chose to keep the shades that I like the most. I had already worn it 100 times, and my goal is to get up to 150, and so I've reached for it an additional 16 times since my last update. And if you can see from my photos, I think I've made some pretty decent progress considering how often I've worn it. And if you can see from the before and after photo, I've actually hit pan on a shade and greatly expanded the pan on another one. So I hit pan on Mariposa, which is like the perfect transition crease shade for me. And I've expanded the pan on the shade here, Getaway. I think this was originally Cocoa Crush from the Going Coconuts palette. I have Mariposa on my crease and a very light layer of Getaway on my lids today, along with some shades from the Arcana palette. And I feel like, considering the amount of shades I've used from both palettes, it's not a very dark or heavy look. It just looks really, I mean, I like it. I don't know what you think. So I'm gonna keep reaching for this until I hit 150 wears and then figure out where I wanna go from there. With this palette, because of how easy it is to pair with other things, and I use it a lot to kind of build a look and then use other shades to make that more interesting, it's just a really great companion palette, and that makes me feel like this would be a good pan that palette to do. So that's always an option and something I'll keep in mind as I go on. I also like to use this project to rotate through my bronzers, and I only had 2 wears left to reach 50 wears on this Hourglass mini bronzer. This is the Ambient Lighting Bronzer in Diffused Bronze Light. So I wore it 2 times and now I can roll it out. There really isn't going to be a lot of difference between the before and after photo from last month, but I wanted to wear it 2 more times so I could officially roll it out. I've hit 50 uses on this, and I rolled in another bronzer to start working on that last month, and that is this What's Up Beauty Cheek Terre bronzer in the shade 10 Light. I hadn't ever worn this on my cheeks when I rolled it in. It's brand new. I've only ever swatched it, and since then I've worn it an additional 22 times. It's the bronzer I'm wearing today. It's very light and buildable, which is perfect for this time of year when I'm not really bronzed to begin with, and just helps add a little bit more life and dimension back to my skin after I've used foundation and concealer to color correct some of the redness on my skin. And speaking of color correcting, this does have little purple veins of powder in there, and I think that helps to keep the product looking much more neutral on me versus pulling super warm or orange, and I'm really liking it so far. This is the perfect like winter bronzer where I'm not really getting a ton of sun. So I will reach for this up to 50 times, roll it out, and replace it with the new bronzer once I've done that. And that is it. So I technically only have 1 roll out and roll in this month. I'm switching out to Perfume for the bronzer and the eyeshadow palette. I had brought things in to replace them last month, so I don't need to do that again this month. I honestly feel like I'm gonna have multiple empty products in my next update if I continue making the progress that I've been making, and that just feels so good. Often I'm really trying to finish a lot of things by the end of the year, and so the beginning of the next year is a little slower for me, but I just haven't found that that's the case. I've actually so far in March gone through more products than I did in January and February combined. So this is just a very unique circumstance that I find myself in. I think once I finish up some of those products, I might open them up to a vote to see what you would like to see me pan, because I understand that some products are more fun to watch than others. So stay tuned for that, but in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!